I did not study journalism or writing in any capacity. I was a bio major and quickly exited that field. Then I got on what they call the M train for business management and got my degree in marketing management and psychology. So here I am with this amazing story, and you know, when I started writing, I was writing novels at the beginning. Me and my best friend wrote 3 novels together, and we self-published the first one. Then we got picked up by a really incredible and very popular male author published out of New York. And we just got like really railroaded. And so that was kind of our baptism into the business and the industry, kind of to get your dream and your money stolen. So we were devastated. And the recovery, you know, not everyone recovers from that. But what I decided was that, you know, I was gonna write something else. And, you know, you live and you learn, like Steve said. And so I did. We wrote 2 other novels together. And then I wrote a stage play called Pass It Down that showed at the Strand Theater in Marietta Square and had an incredible show, and we sold out. But after that, I decided I wanted to get into writing for television and the big screen. So I was looking on a website for ABFF I had attended the year prior and saw a competition in collaboration with GMC. And I just knew that I was supposed to do it. And I knew that if I did it, something amazing was going to happen. It was as if I was seeing the whole thing happen in reverse. And they said, we want the option to make your movie. And I was just like, good. Because that's what I wrote it for. So I left there, you know, it wasn't guaranteed, but it was an option. I signed all my rights away, my life, my daughter's rights, everything. I don't have to take it and make it. And a year later, somebody's child was produced and made. Writing for TV is interesting. If you're writing for a specific network, which is what I'm doing right now, GMC is the only network I've written for. So the first thing that I had to do was figure out what was in their wheelhouse. I had to go and look and see what's been on their channel before, what's popular, you know, what people like, what they don't like, and to know the audience that's watching GMC. If you don't know who you're talking to, then you know you're kind of at a disadvantage. So that's one of the first things you would need to do. If you want to submit your work to a network, you need to kind of target networks that are within the genre of what you write, obviously. GMC, this particular competition was for faith and family friendly material. So I knew going in exactly what they wanted, and I really didn't try to do anything, you know, just totally outrageous. I kind of wanted to hit every single point that they wanted. They didn't want a behind the pulpit kind of church story, but they still wanted to have overtones of faith, family, hope, belief in a higher power, that kind of thing. So I just did exactly what they said. There's also the do's and don'ts. So one of the challenges for me, which has turned out to actually be a positive thing. For example, GMC, there's no profanity, and I use profanity sometimes. So I had to figure out how to entertain my viewers without the use of profanity. Now, you know, being an intelligent woman, I know how to speak and not use profanity, but I do believe that every now and again it just doesn't, if you just really want to get a point across, there's just certain words that just really help you do that. But I couldn't use those words. So I think it's helped me to become a stronger writer, actually. They have network rating parameters, you know, that I had to stay within, so you can't, you know, write anything too racy, no nudity, you know, you can't really allude to sex too much. So these are all of the things things that I was kind of bound by, as well as drugs and homosexuality. You know, certain networks, you know, that's their thing, and then other networks that just, you absolutely can't do it. So those are kind of the main things when you're looking at networks to target for your work. If you're not a person that can conform, then you need to write for a network that, you know, will accept pretty much any and everything. In addition, GMC, you know, obviously before I submitted, they've had formulas that were working for them, but they were looking for new content. That's why they did the competition. But being competitive, as I said, I ran track at Georgia Tech, I wanted to know who had come before me, and I wanted to do better. So I looked at the formula of the writing for the television movies and some of the other TV movies that premiered on GMC in the past and watched those and studied those, and I believe that that's really important. You have to kind of know who you're up against if you want to have a lasting position in this industry. And Hollywood is very much about the exact same thing, just a little different. That's all it is. They have a ton of money, like Steve mentioned, but they do need ideas. Until they get the ideas that they're looking for, they'll continue to do the trilogies, and they're going to make money off of it, but they want new creative ideas. So writing for a network, I kind of use the terminology that you have to learn to think inside of a box. There's not a whole lot of outside thinking that they really want you to. They're up for a good idea, or maybe a suggestion here or there, but for the most part, they want you to do what is already working. And that took some getting used to for me, but some of the suggestions I guess I would have with writing for a network is that you have to embrace that box that you're in. And just because you're in a box doesn't mean that you can't make it your own box, so that the next person that's in that box, sees the mark that you left on it. Hang some pictures in your box, put the pen in your box, just make it your box. Writing with signatures, I always like to kind of leave signatures in my work. For example, somebody's child has a grandmother figure that's one of the leading roles, Lynn Whitfield. She was not happy with that wig at all, the one that you just saw her in. But Lynn was great, and I always tend to either feature a grandparent role, or one of the characters is affected directly by maybe advice from a grandparent. I didn't grow up with my grandparents, so it's just kind of my way of kind of fantasizing about how that is or how it would be. So I'm not necessarily writing from experience, but kind of how I think it would go or how I would want it to go for me. Another signature I tend to have is prayers. They were really upset about this one thing. The prayer was super long. It was really long. So I remember Lynn and Michael and Byron, we were sitting around talking. I was like, hey, maybe later we can go out and have a Bible. Like, yeah, we kind of got to study through the scene that you wrote that's super long. So I was like, oh, okay. So that's something else to kind of keep in mind. People really have to rehearse the words that you're writing. And it's, you just kind of want to keep that in mind. It sounds kind of weird, but just kind of remember, you have to kind of remember that. So another signature, I love dinner scenes. I think they're great opportunities in real life, as well as in film and television, to let your characters kind of talk about their day, have arguments. You see the arguments where somebody pushes back from the table and walks away. They don't do that as much in Black families, I don't think, but you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, dinner scenes in movies are great times for people to discuss how they feel, or to talk about what's going on. And another thing I'll usually put in a film is one of my characters will talk about how much they hate cats, because I hate cats a lot. So a signature is important. It's just kind of, it represents you, my hair is natural, it's one of my signatures, and you can make a signature with your writing as well. I think that's important. Writers are very manipulative individuals. We are great people, but when you think about it, we start with a blank slate, and our goal is to manipulate your feelings and emotions. So I can't tell you how many times I, went back and, I just really wanted to make people cry at a certain point in the film, and I just had to keep manipulating my words, the tone of the scene, until I felt like I was just really going to devastate people to the point that they just wouldn't be able to hold back tears. And that's just a horrible thing to do, but that's what writers do. We coerce you, we manipulate your emotions, and we fabricate. Like I said, I didn't grow up with my grandmother, but you would think I did. So that's what we do, and we're great at it. So I encourage you to be manipulative as a writer, to kind of don't reach, I wouldn't say to reach too far outside of what you've experienced or what you're used to, but don't be afraid to imagine things that you haven't touched or felt or experienced as well. So plot. Plot is one of the things I want to talk about first, because it's truly the heart of your story. Plot is everything. I was at Morehouse last year, and Jeffrey Fletcher was there. It was the first time I touched an Oscar, and it was his. He adapted the novel Precious for the film. And one of the things that stuck out was that he said that plot was number one when it comes to writing, and that dialogue was second. And it just kind of, stuck with me, and as I've been writing more, it's absolutely true. Plot is not something that's passive, it's very aggressive, it's a force that has to continue moving. Without the plot and the theme of what your show or film or story is going to be about, it's not going to make any sense. So your plot really has to, it's got to be together, it has to be tight. I've written scripts before just from a scene that I thought about while I was riding my bike or walking in my neighborhood. I mean, truly, sometimes I just get thoughts about one scene and write a full script around it. But that doesn't mean, the plot doesn't have to be tight. I have to go before that scene and after it and make sure that everything, really comes together to make it all make sense. So just remember that plot is a force, it's dynamic, and it's not static. It can't stay still. If you think about it in terms of a square, it's going along straight, but then it turns and it curves. You just can't, nobody just wants to see it just keep going straight. Every choice that you allow your characters to make influences the plot. You need to know very well what genre your writing falls in. There's a book that I found at Goodwill that's incredible, and it's called 20 Master Plots and How to Build Them. And it's by a gentleman named Ron Tobias, Tobias, and it's an old book, but it is it's a gem. I really think that if you can find it, it's on Amazon. I bought it for someone the other day, so you can pick it up. It's a really great book, but basically it just talks about how all of the stories from the beginning of time are all based around virtually 20 plots. And if you think about it, if you watch any movies, if you watch 5 movies, and you have run across some of these plots. So for example, there's a quest plot. The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, she's trying to get home. She's on a quest. I've seen a million movies with the quest plot. The adventure plot, Indiana Jones, movies like that, where there's a major journey, like Steve said, a hero journey taking place. There's the pursuit plot, so like Jaws, for example, Bonnie and Clyde, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Then there's rescue, escape, revenge, temptation, transformation, and the list just kind of goes on. Let's see. Steve also mentioned Aristotle, and I'm a fan of Aristotle. He's actually considered the grandfather of dramatic theory. Any great speaker knows Aristotle. There's a theory he came up with called ethos, pathos, and logos. And it applies to public speakers, so some of your best speakers ever, Obama, Clinton, MLK, you name it. I'm positive that either themselves or their speechwriters are very familiar with this theory. Also, Aristotle talks about the 3 movements of any story, which is the beginning, middle, and obviously the end. It's very basic. In writing, there's always an A story, and then there's a B story. Sometimes there's even C, D, and E stories. So I showed that clip to just show you the very beginning. The A story of somebody's child is Lynn Whitfield's character, Constance, is going through kidney failure, and she needs a new kidney. So the whole film is based around that. It's based around how her son Douglas feels about that, how her grandson feels about it, and just how it's affecting their lives. But then there's a B story, which is Benjamin's life, the guy that they were talking to that was cleaning up in the lobby. Now he's an ex-con who's basically trying to adjust to being out of prison and get his life together. So what he's going through directly will affect the things that they're going through. And the B story just helps to move the plot along. The A story, you can write with just an A story, but a B story and side stories just kind of help to peek in and peek out, just to help things kind of stay interesting. And like I said, twisting and turning is important. And this movie has a huge twist at the end. So, real quick, back to the 3 parts of a story Aristotle mentioned, beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is considered your setup. It's where you define your characters and decide what they want. Once you've established the intent of your characters, you're ready for the middle, which is where the action and the drama rises to the pinnacle. Let's see here. Obstacles, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is the part of the story where the good guy or the good girl runs into trouble. You can't just have your main character achieve what they want to get, and that you won't have enough story for a full story. So you have to introduce obstacles that are sometimes called reversals, and they're just things that get in the way. So she needs a transplant. I obviously cannot have her, Clifton Powell, call her tomorrow and tell her that the kidney's ready. It's not how it works. So we have to make things not work out and then have things miraculously work out. But then you can introduce a twist even after they work out again. So that's the beauty of being able to create. The end contains the climax, the falling action, and the denouement, or the final resolution of the plot. Everything is exposed at the end. Like, it's not a time to hold back. You cannot let people walk away confused, and they'll talk about you really bad. So they need to understand clearly what happened, so that when someone asks them, well, how was it? How was it? And you want them to go, oh my God, it was so great. At the end, the end is very critical to the full story. So everything needs to be exposed and clarified, unless you go into it knowing that you're going to have a sequel. And they need to be clear on the fact that there's a sequel at the end as well. So that's okay to do. So dialogue is next. Keep the dialogue short and don't ramble, like I was telling you about my prayer sometimes. People have a short attention span, so you just kind of want to keep it short and concise. You think about it like a conversation you have with your girlfriend. She says something, then you say something. Some conversations don't go that way. Sometimes just one person says something. Those relationships generally don't last. So in a regular conversation, there's banter and it goes back and forth. And when you're writing, that's how your characters need to speak to one another. Dialogue is words, but it's also actions. So, for example, when Lynn Whitfield was waiting patiently for her son to talk to the guy that was mopping, in the action part that I wrote, it probably said something like, Lynn and her grandson wait, on the side as, Douglas talks to Benjamin. Now, if I had her stand there acting a fool, like, oh, you're taking so long, what are you doing? Then, I'm creating a person who's impatient. I'm changing the character. So the action is just as important as the words that they say. So her action, waving and smiling, like, take your time. It shows that she's just a sweet grandmother. So just like in life, your actions and your words represent who you are. Also represent your characters. Okay, so I like this part. There's a really popular book called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. You should definitely read that. So the basis of the title, so I was like, what is it about? So Save the Cat is a concept, it's something that people used to do when you want the audience to automatically love a character. Basically, you just have them save an animal. Who doesn't love somebody who saves something, or, jumps out and saves the kid before the car hits them? It's just how we think as human beings. It's what we like to see happen. So I'm going to write a book. I decided last week I am going to go back to writing a book of someone called Kick the Cat. I told you I hate cats. Now, I would not really kick a cat. I wouldn't kick a cat unless I felt threatened. But I want to show you just kind of the scene to show you once again how you can manipulate characters. So let's say the scene opens up in a nursing home. And there's this woman in her bed. She's obviously not faring very well, and her granddaughter is at her bedside, and she's just coming to visit. So the nurse comes in and visiting hours over. So the granddaughter's like, oh, okay, and she puts on her. She's just a very demure-looking woman, very innocent, looking woman. And she walks outside, and she's going to her car, and there's a cat by her car, and she just kicks it. Then you're just like, well, what? You thought that she's going to visit her grandmother who's ill and dying. She's this great person. Now she just kicked this cat. Like, that's crazy. So now you're not sure. She's got these dual personalities and these other sides to her. And it really is that simple. That really is how easily you can manipulate how you want the viewer to see the character. So, y'all look for Kick the Cat. He said sell. I haven't even written a book, but when you see Kick the Cat, you're gonna know it. If you want the audience to love someone, have them save the cat. You want to hate them, have them kick the cat. And just consider dialogue the steering wheel of your plot. It truly does control the entire thing. Okay, so characters. part of the quirky way that a writer's mind works. When you think about it, it's totally insane to have these people in your mind that are talking to one another. They're angry at one another, you know, they're falling in love, they're breaking up, it's really kind of intense as a writer, because these things live with you. I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm writing things down, I'm constantly emailing myself scenes. It really is something that takes over you, and that's when you know you're really kind of into what you're writing. So you want to give yourself time to know your characters. When I wrote somebody's child, I knew what they were going to look like, but I didn't know who was going to play the roles, so I may have had, a light-skinned guy about 5'5" in mind for Douglas, and then they were like, Michael Jai White's playing. I was like, of course, that's exactly who I had in mind. So, I think when the characters come to you, I do believe that it's like kind of it's almost like a birth. Like, they look the way they look, like, you know how it feels, and so that's just who they are, but that can easily be converted, as you can see. Michael Jai White did a fantastic job, but you need to categorize your characters. You need to decide if they're main characters, primary, secondary, or just background. Everybody needs to kind of stay in their place. If you have a background character that's constantly talking, then they're not a background character. If they're in every scene, you need to reassess and say maybe they're a primary or secondary character. And that's something that comes along with the drafting and kind of the brainstorming area, but just kind of keep that in mind. That's why you categorize them at the beginning, so you have the categories and you can kind of move it around. Another thing that I've learned reading a couple of books, the audience, it's easy to insult your audience's intelligence. As a writer, you're naturally, you want to tell them everything. But a reader or a viewer they want to be able to infer some things. And so what I'm saying is, for example, I want to have a scene where there's a young 24-year-old law student or lawyer, and she just broke up with her boyfriend, and she's just a super professional little woman. So instead of having the scene come up and have her stand and face the camera and say, hey, I'm 24, I'm a lawyer, and my boyfriend just, dumped me, you have the scene open up, she's in her office, sitting behind the desk, she's, suited up. You have a secretary come in and, announce her messages for the day, so you see immediately, okay, she's in charge. And then when the secretary walks out, you have her pick up a picture that's framed on her desk of her boyfriend, and she just starts just defacing it, drawing horns on it all. So you can let your audience figure it out. It's really a mistake to tell them every single thing, and to have the characters say it all the time. So sometimes just let the characters do things. For example, when he said, hi, Grandma, that's how you knew that Lynn Whitfield was his grandmother. And then you put it together that Mike Jai White's his dad. So, you have to be careful not to kind of handhold and just let your audience figure things out. Like I said, one of the things for me, I have to be careful with my characters because they do become a force once I do get to know them. And, at first I have to write their kind of dimensions, how tall they are, their personalities, and I have to kind of refer back to a list of all of my characters. But once I get to know them, I know them. I don't have to look back. I know that Valerie is this way, that way, or the other way. I know that, she doesn't like this, she does like this. But you have to control them. They become their own kind of entities. And they can take you way off course. You have a character who works at a restaurant, but he also, wants to be a comedian, and he's a construction worker, and he's a photographer. It's just you have to stay focused and establish your characters and, who they are, and not get too far off of it, and have fun with them, obviously. Let's see. The end. So, like I was saying, the end is super important because when people leave, they're going to remember the end, probably more so than the beginning. I don't think people like for things to drag out. They want to kind of know when it's wrapping up because they want to get excited. Okay, I've been sitting here and I've been enjoying this, but now I want to see what's going to happen at the end. So be careful of your pacing and make sure that, like Steve was saying, my scripts are generally less than 120 pages. They're usually about, and that's because I generally write for television, but I also write feature film scripts. But my scripts are between 88 pages. 88 is what GMC generally requires for their network. But my feature film scripts are usually about 105 pages. I just finished writing one that's like 112, and that's the longest that I've ever done. So you want to kind of stay in that range. I know that there are some producers that if they look at it and it's longer than a certain amount of pages, it can be a turn off for them because they feel like, you don't know the industry standard, you haven't done your homework enough even to know that, and they may not consider it just for that reason. So just be careful not to be too lengthy. Again, unless there's going to be a sequel, you need to tie the story up. And it's kind of like a funeral for your characters at the end. After I finish with a film, for me it's kind of like seeing old friends, like watching somebody's child. I don't think about them anymore. I can't keep all these people in my head. That would be too much. So I have to let them go. I don't think about them anymore. I start to forget kind of all of their little nuances, and because I have new people that are the most important thing in that moment that I'm writing about. So the end is just not a time to get lazy. You need to consider that the success of your film could be based on the end. So those are the main things I really wanted to talk about. And if y'all have any questions, I'll take